We're live. We are live. Exciting times. And very exciting times because we are talking about Git for vibe coders. Bit of an interesting one. I have met quite a few vibe coders over the last few weeks, and many of them talk about things related to version control without them knowing about the fact they're talking about version control. So I am doing this little session just to explain how does Git work and how it relates to vibe coding. And yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to hang on for a little bit and just wait for folks to arrive, and yeah, we'll see where we go from there. Now, if you want to have a bit more of a hands-on version of this, then you're going to want to be in a position where you can sign up for GitHub, have an account, and share your username, and we can do more of a hands-on thing if that's of any use. But aside for that, here we are. I am going to hang on for a little bit longer as well. So gone the hour now. Right, no one's in at the minute, so I'm just going to chat for the meantime, just to keep the whole thing going, right? Keep the whole thing ploughing on. But yeah, Git is important to understand. Really important, because it also enables you to take sort of things that have been created already. Like, you might go in there and find an interesting project that you may want to build on top of, and someone might have created a repository for it already. So understanding Git is important because that's how you copy code, right? So rather than going through a whole process of, oh, do you know what, I like this project, but I want to add more to it, then you need a way of copying the code, making your changes, and then sending that back up for a review. And that's what Git effectively helps you with. So when it comes to vibe coding, that's really cool, right? Because what you don't want, it would be useful for you if you're vibe coding, not to be in a position where you're just like, oh, I have to start from scratch every single time. I have to start from an empty folder every single time, right? You can start from something that's already been created, and that will help you out along the way. And that's sort of the key bit of Git altogether, really. We'll just hang on for a couple more minutes and see if folks show up, and then we'll just start off regardless. I've also got some folks, hopefully from TikTok as well. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I've posted everywhere. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this is going to be. I'm going to do more of these streams, I think, just explaining things. I did very much experience the situation with a bunch of students who were at a CI/CD event, and they were kind of talking about writing code and all this stuff, and they were just like, oh, well, how do you get 1,000 people working on the same code base? How do you make sure there's no conflicts? How do you make sure blah, 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 blah? And it's like, yeah, that's what Git does. And it was quite clear that all these students had no idea, even though they spent 2 years building technology, had no idea what Git was. Absolutely wild. But that's the reality of the situation. You find yourself in a position where you're like, oh yeah, I'm learning this thing, and they just don't teach you the things that are actually kind of important. And I get it to a certain extent. All right, 2 more minutes. Let's see if folks arrive. I hope folks do arrive. People did ask me to do this one, so it would be nice if they arrived. Yeah. And Git is a great one. Git was created by a guy in 7 days. Really not that complicated. When you look at what it does, it's not complicated at all. Right? It really is straightforward. And it's quite intimidating for folks who have never experienced it, because there's just like this whole bunch of commands that does a thing and you don't know what it does. Equally, you don't realize that Git exists outside of GitHub, right? That's another part of it. you don't have that realization that there is this kind of, there's Git is just the mechanism and the program that you use. GitHub is just merely an implementation of it. So people kind of end up trying to go to Git and then realizing, oh, hang on a minute. A little bit awkward. Git is something completely different. And that's where people get confused, because there's stuff that you do for GitHub and there's stuff that you do for, potentially GitLab, but also Bitbucket and whatever. But it all follows under the same sort of umbrella of this is what it is. So we're at 5 minutes past, so I'm going to kick off now. And we're just going to go through a little bit more. So I'm just going to share my screen and just really want to talk about Git in itself and really just explaining the important parts of this. So if you have an app, all that app is just a collection of files, right? That's all an app is, just a bunch of files, right? And when you say, do you know what, I want to download this app, all that you do is you copy those files to your device, right? Whether that be, a laptop or even on a phone when you download something from the App Store, this is merely just saying, I'm going to copy the files from wherever this lives over to my device, right? That's an app. That's all that is. So when you update an app, what you're effectively doing in that update is you are either, adding files, changing files, or deleting files, right? And when you make those changes, then you have this, you have updated your app. And therefore, this kind of says, oh, by the way, there's an update. This is version, 1.1. And then your device will copy those files down. And sometimes it will only copy the changes. This is why sometimes when you update an app, it's very, very quick. And other times you update the app, it takes forever. Because sometimes you just literally just get the changes and that's it. So here's the problem that can occur, right? Which is you're in a situation where you're sort of development, right? You're in development and you're actively working on these files, right? And you're changing them and you're adding stuff and you're taking them away. Well, what you don't want to do is take these work in progress files and push them up to here, right? Because what will happen is someone will come along to use it and it will be broken, right? Because it's like, oh, this is still work in progress. The thing hasn't been fixed. The thing hasn't been tested. And therefore, once it ends up on someone's device, it's completely broken, right? And even if you're on the web, right? If you're in the cloud, it's the exact same thing. On the cloud, you're still downloading files to your computer to use them. And it's this, I just realized my face is in the way. So I'm just going to do this here. This is your work in progress file. Okay, so this is the issue that can happen, right? You're in a position, you're doing work in progress, you're working on this file, you send it up to here, it's not ready, but you can't push it here. So what do you do with that, right? What you want to do is sort of get to a point where you say, well, this might be ready, or it might not be ready. It needs to be reviewed first, right? And then once it's sort of been looked over and it's kind of gotten a review and it gets an okay, then it gets sent to the app and then it gets downloaded to devices when people have an update. All of this stuff is what Git does. So I'm going to go through an example. It's going to be a bit rough and ready. I'm going to do it off the cuff, so hopefully all will be good. So one thing I'm going to do is try and avoid the command line. I'm going to do everything via GitHub desktop, and we will create version management through there. So that's our problem. Let's kind of go ahead. And this is what GitHub looks like, by the way. So I'm going to just do this, and I'm going to create a folder here, and I'm going to call it season. Max being max, eh? Let's get rid of that. Okay. seasons, whoops, poems. Okay, that is the folder. You can't really see that. It's called seasons poems. That's the folder. Fantastic, great. Now, like I said, it's just a collection of files, right? An app is just a collection of files, right? So let's create a file and put it inside here. So I'm going to open up the folder itself, like so. And then I'm going to open up TextEdit, all right? And I'm just going to create a new document, like so. Now I'm going to pop that over here. And in here, I've already created some poems, so we can work with this. We're seeing a few people arriving, which is great. So I'm going to create a file, right? And why can't I open that? There we go. Here we are. So I'm just going to create a file, and that file will have a poem in it. Let me just zoom in there. So here is our poem, right? The autumn leaves in gold descent, fiery and fleeting, lovely friends. The crisp, cool air begins to bite and whispers of coming night. All right, beautiful, fantastic. So I'm going to save this. So I'm going to hit File and Save, and I'm going to call this one Autumn, because this is the autumn poem, right? So I'm going to say Autumn. And I'm going to go to desktop and I'm going to put it in season poems. Okay. And there we are. There is out. Now, this just seems like completely obvious, right? This is it. This is where we're at. This is our file now. We have it in here, which is great. You know, fairly straightforward. We all understand that. We can create a file and we can put stuff in the file and we can save the file. Fantastic. Okay, so where does Git come in all of this? So this is going to manage all of the changes that we make, right? So if right now, my Git, and this is just GitHub desktop, my Git doesn't know about this, right? It doesn't understand what it is, right? It's like, I don't know what this project is. I don't know what even is this, right? So we need to make it aware of what it is. So I'm going to say add an existing repository, and it's going to tell me no, I can't, because there is no Git here, basically. So I'm going to open that up, and if I do this, it will say no, I can't do that. I want to create a repository, and that's just an easier way to get the files right. So it's got the folder season poems. The location is on my desktop, which is great. I've just noticed the zoom does not work on Streamlabs, which is great. Brilliant. And I don't think I can zoom in. That's the most I can zoom in. Okay, so it's got the path. It's got all this stuff in here. Git ignore. I don't know if I can do a Mac OS one, if there's one in here. Let's have a look. No, there isn't. Brilliant. But that's fine. That's okay. We're okay with that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say create repository. Brilliant. Now, what Git is doing, it is tracking this folder, right? It is taking a look at this folder and being like, okay, then any change that happens, I'm going to keep a log of it and I'm going to keep note of what these changes are. And if I go to history, it's already created something for me called an initial commit. And the initial commit is basically saying you're committing to this change, right? What you have done so far, this is like a save point in a video game, right? You've come in, you've saved this piece, you've saved it at this point, and the reason you want to do that will come apparent coming up in the next few minutes. So I'm going to create a change. Okay, I am going to grab some more of this poem and I'm going to stick it down in the bottom like so, and I'm going to click save. Now when I come back to GitHub desktop, you'll see that there is a log of the changes. It tells you what's been added, it tells you what's been taken away. In this case, a line has been taken away because the final line didn't have a return at the end of the line, right, to indicate new line. So as I've added this in, I've had to put the new line in. So that line is going to get removed and replaced with the same text, but with the new line at the end of it, like so. Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Now, what I can do here, essentially, is to say, oh, that's good, right? And I'm happy with the state that the poem is in at the moment. This is my save point. This is a point where I'm like, right, I've done a bunch of work, and I'm in a place where I'm like, right, if I do anything after this, then I want to be able to come back to this point, right? It is your save point. And that is what in other words, we are committing to this change. So I'm going to say, you can then give this thing a name, right? So updated versus 2 to 3. So I'm going to say added versus 2 and 3 to the autumn poem, like so. And I am now going to commit to this. So I say commit one file, because it's only one file. Fantastic, that's now done. And we can go to history and see that this is the changes that happened, right? It kind of shows us here, these are the changes that happened. We added in these lines. Brilliant, fantastic. Let's go back to our file now. And let's get some lorem ipsum. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add in just a paragraph of lorem ipsum. And I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to come back to here and come back to changes. And you will see that here is some lorem ipsum, right? Those are the changes we made. And that's great. That's fantastic, right? We've done that. But then I'm like, actually, this is wrong. I don't want the lorem ipsum in there. Of course I don't want the lorem ipsum in there. Why is that going to help me? The lorem ipsum is not going to help me at all. And I think you can't quite see that, but I've just got that at the bottom there. Right, so this lorem ipsum is not going to help me at all. I don't want this. This is of no interest to me. Right, so how can I get rid of this? Well, I could delete it out, but what I could also do is that I haven't committed to this yet. So I can take this file and right click it. And the first option is discard changes. So I'm just going to click that and it says, are you sure you want to discard all changes to autumn.txt? I'm going to say discard changes. Fantastic. Now, if I close this and reopen it, you will see that that lorem ipsum is now gone. Right. So that's one of the things about Git that's important. And you need to think about this from the perspective of doing some vibe coding, right? You're sat there, you've got your code base. And one thing that the LLMs will do, and one thing that a lot of these tools will do, is that they'll always rewrite the whole file or a massive chunk of the file. And sometimes you don't want to be in a position where you are doing, when you're adding stuff in, it may not be as clean as just here's a paragraph, right? You might have thousands of lines of code and you will end up with, if I grab this, for example, you might end up with the case of, oh, here is a line and then here is a line and then we have another one here, and you're adding stuff all over the place and it's a big old mess and you've been doing this and you're going da 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 da. And you're like, cool, and then you have to save it because you have to run the program, so you have to save it. And once you've done all of that stuff, you're kind of in a position where you're like, oh, actually, this is wrong. You try and use it and something's slightly broken and something's not working as expected. That's not good, right? So I need to get rid of this. I need to go back to that version where it was working and everything was fine. I need to ditch out everything I've done. Now, to go in line by line and make all those changes would be an absolute pain. It will take you a long time and you may not catch everything. Equally, you may not catch things in a way which is, appropriate. You might miss something. You might delete something that was originally there and it shouldn't have been. You want an exact copy of that moment where you were like, I'm committing to this thing. So I'm going to come back here with all of this lorem ipsum all put in here and say, actually, I need to go back to what it was. Cool. Discard changes. And let me close that and reopen it. And we could go back to our previous version. Isn't that fantastic? And this happens a lot. All right. So again, as a vibe coder, you're going to see this a lot. You're going to generate a line of code. You're going to get to a point where you're like, right, this is working at the moment that I want it to work. I'm going to go ahead with this and commit to this. But then I'm going to do a bunch more vibe coding. But the LLM might just rewrite your file of thousands of lines and put loads of stuff into it. And it might be wrong. And, these things hallucinate, right? And these things sort of do, unexpected things. So you want to revert back to when it was working to then do it again. And this is how you can do it. And this will also inevitably save you tokens, because if you know that the LLM's sort of in a weird loop, you can just say, right, stop that, go back again and start again from this point. It might help you. And I've just got someone in the chat talking about what is vibe code. Vibe code is using an LLM, something like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, to generate code for you for your application. Okay, back to our poems real quick. So this is great. This is fantastic. We're in this point now. But again, we've done nothing in GitHub yet, right? It's just all local to our machine. And that's the functionality of Git on your machine. It just allows you to kind of create a save point and go back to it. If you've gone ahead and messed things up, you can always go back to a working version. So I'm going to get to a point where I'm like, okay, do you know what? I'm done working at my computer. I'm going to go down to a coffee shop and do some work. I need to take my code with me, right? I need to go work this on my laptop, but this is on my desktop. How do I do that? Well, in this case, where I've got this here and our last version is saved here with our poem, what I can now do is publish the repository, which we can see in the top right here. So I'm going to click publish, and it says, well, what is it called? Season Poems, poems for the seasons. Okay. And I'm not going to make this private. I'll make it public so you can go to Chuffed on GitHub and you can see it for yourself. And I'm going to publish the repository. And we'll just hang on for a minute. I'm just going to have a quick sip of water. I got another comment. Is it easy to learn vibe code? Yeah, it's just really easy. You're just telling the LLM what to do, essentially. Is version control mean saving your code as a vibe coder? Yeah, it's just a way of managing all the changes, essentially. That's what it does. Right, I have published this repository. And what this is basically doing, it's saying, right, the state of the files they're in now, put that on the internet, right? So if I come over to my GitHub here, this is GitHub Desktop, it's connected to my GitHub account. Therefore, I can go to Season Poems in the browser and you will see the work that I have done. And it will have the commit message that I put in there, updated verses 2 to 3. I can click on the file and I can see the contents of the file. Right, fantastic, that's great. So what I'll end up doing is being in a situation where I'm like, okay, cool, I need to go work on my laptop. Right, so let's go over to my laptop. And here is my laptop. Okay, I'm going to turn around a little bit. So if I come over to my laptop here, this is my Windows laptop. Okay, let me just scooch this over a little bit actually to here so my head isn't too much in the way. There we go. And right, so I'm now on my Windows laptop. Fantastic, right? So I want to be in a position where I'm like, okay, I want to work on this on my laptop. Okay, so I can come here and I can say clone repository. And clone repository is what it is. It clones it. So I'm going to go say, hey, where are these files? Bring them back down to my machine. So I can say find repository, and it was seasons. I need to do a bit of a refresh. Okay, seasons, poems. And I'm just going to save it on a desktop, much as I did previously, like so. And here we are. Fantastic. I can run fetch origin at the top. And what fetch is going to do, it's going to just basically fetch all those files for me. So as I look on my desktop, I should have, where are we? Season poems, season, what am I looking at that for? Seasons poems, here we are. So I can open this up and here we can see my, let's zoom in. Here we can see the files exactly as they were. I can open this up in Notepad and here is the entire poem. Fantastic. Isn't that great? Now, what I'm going to do also is... oh, I'm not done that right. Let me just quickly do generate me a verse of a poem for the season of autumn. Okay, so I'm just going to do that real quick. I thought I had one ready. I don't. And I'm going to go through the same process, right? As once Gemini sort of sorts itself out. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to copy. In fact, I'm going to put the mistake in there. I'm going to copy what the LLM responded to me, right? And I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to hit save, and now I can come back to here, and as we've done before, right? We're going to commit to this stage of development. So I'm going to say added verse 4, added the final verse, and I'm going to commit one file. And now that I've got this live, right, again, this is still only working locally. So whenever I need to push it to an online resource and an online saving of my code or my poems, I'm going to click push origin. And push origin is going to send everything up to the cloud. Fantastic. So let's come back to my computer. Now here we haven't seen the changes, but if I refresh this, now you can see the changes are in here. Fantastic. But if I come to the file and I open up the file again, there are no changes. It's exactly the same as it was before. So what I have to do is run another fetch origin. So push, when you're done with your changes, you push it up. If you want to bring stuff down, you do fetch. And I'm just going to fetch that. Close this, reopen this. Ooh, whoops. Oh no, sorry. You do the fetch to pull the files, and then you do a pull to bring the files into your project. So I'm going to click pull, and then as I open this, you will now see those changes that I made on my laptop are here. Like so. Fantastic. Isn't that great? And what I can do here, and I can just continue going back and forth, right? I can go, oh, I didn't mean to put that line in here. That was a shame. I'm going to save that. Deleted LLM line, and you can send messages to say, you left the response in the poem, and I'm going to hit. I'm not going to do DS store. I'm going to hit commit. Fantastic. That's now committed, and I can do push. Awesome source. There we go. We have now pushed that. I can come back to my Windows machine. I can say, right, fetch this. Awesome. And then I'm going to pull those files down. Awesome. And when I come back to the file, you can see that line has now been removed. Brilliant. That is the basics of Git to start off with. This is just, hey, go create some files. As you're editing them, create a save point that you can go back to. That way, if you continue to edit, things go wrong, you can revert back to where you were. When you push this to a remote server, a cloud server like GitHub, it means that you can pull those files down whenever you see fit, as long as it's the most updated version of files, which is why when you finish working, the last thing you want to do is commit and push, because you're going to go onto your next machine and say, right, I am going to fetch and pull. That's how the basics of it. Now, what if you've got more than one person working on a project? And this is where the collaboration of Git comes in. Before I go in, I'm going to grab a drink. If you've got any questions, please do chuck it in this chat. And you can go to my GitHub on chuffed.dom and look for season poems, and you will find it, and you'll be able to see all the files. Okay, no questions? Let's carry on then. Let's keep going. So what happens when there's more than one person working on a thing? Let's talk about the problem to start off with. Let's go back to my Excel drawer. Did I close it down? Excel drawer. Yes, I did. Okay, let's talk about several people working. So let's reset the canvas. So again, our app is a bunch of files, right? That's all it is, a bunch of files, like so. Fantastic. Okay, this is our app. And the thing is, you're going to have several people, right? So you're going to have, this is, developer 1, here is developer 2, and here is developer 3. Okay. And all of these people are going to be pulling the files down, making their changes, pushing them back up again. This person is going to be pulling their files down, making changes, pushing it back up again. Right? All these people are going to be doing that thing. And you can kind of start to see, well, hang on a minute, there might be a little bit of a problem here, right? If we've got everyone sort of, I'm editing my version of it, D1 is editing their version, D2 editing their version, D3 editing their version. How do we make sure what is the downloadable version for the user? And we'll put the user here. Whoops. And we'll put the user here. How do we know that the downloadable version for the user is actually going to be relevant, right? That's going to be the most up-to-date one. That's going to be the working one. That's going to make sure that all of these developers are. Now, you could sort of sit there and have meetings about every single line of code, but that's not going to be very useful to you. So therefore, you need to kind of say, do you know what? Actually, you need to make a separate line. So we first started off with, we start here with our initial file. And then we added the second verse, right? And then we added the third verse, like so. What we kind of need to do, if the third and fourth verse are being used at the same time, what we need to do is branch off so that somebody can work on the fourth verse. Once these two are complete and we say, right, that we're really happy with that, we can now then say, right, okay, well, we can merge this back into the main branch. Okay. And this can happen, with several people doing lots of different things at different stages. And this is how software is developed, right? And this allows lots of people to work on things, right? So you don't have to be like too fussed about, right, does this work, does this not work, blah, 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 blah. This is what it's going to do. So let's do that. I'm going to close that down. So I want to work on a Spring poem, right? And I'm going to come here. I'm going to say, right, I'm going to create a new branch and I'm going to call it Spring. Spring poem 01. You kind of want to number these things because if you keep it too vague, then you're going to get issues on the other side of it. So I'm going to create that branch. And I'm going to bring my changes to it. So that means all the changes that I've made are going to come here. And that basically means, well, I might be working on the main branch. I've committed some stuff. Actually, I need to work on a new branch. I could bring all my changes with me. So I'm going to switch branch. Cool. And it says down here, commit to Spring Poem 01. Brilliant. So I'm going to come here and create a new file. In fact, I'm going to go new file like so. And I'm going to generate a Spring poem. I can't remember if I did it or not. So let's do that. Generate a poem about spring. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm just going to pop that in here, like so. And this is my poem about spring. I'm going to click save. And now I've got, let's go spring. And I'm going to save it in here. Awesome. Now we can see in, I forgot it doesn't work. But yeah, anyway, you can see that there's two files here, one named autumn, one named spring. If we come back to my GitHub desktop, we can see that the spring poem is here. Brilliant. So let's commit this now. So I want to say created the spring poem. first version of Spring, like so. And I'm going to commit that. Awesome. That's now committed. Now I'm going to do the same again, and it's going to say publish. So I'm going to just come up here to the, as much as it said publish repo to begin with, it now says publish branch. So I'm going to click this and it's going to publish the branch. So I've only created that branch locally. Again, it's all local in this whole thing to start off with. It's only once we need other people to work on it, or we need to work on a different device, do we then push it to the cloud to be able to say, well, I need to go get that from somewhere. So I've now done that, and if I come back to my GitHub, I can come back, and you will see Spring Poem 1 had recent pushes 23 seconds ago. Okay, fantastic. I can go view that now. Now, here on GitHub, you can see that there is a thing called main, where I can click that, and it shows me the branches. So I can switch to the branch and have a look at the differences and go, oh yeah, cool, yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to go back to my Windows machine. Okay. And I'm going to generate a summer poem. Generate a poem about summer. And yeah, basically what's going to happen, I'm just going to create this poem, create a slightly longer one than this one. So let's copy that. And let's come here, let's paste that in there. So here is our summer poem. I'm going to also, before I save that, I'm going to create a new branch on this side. So on another machine, right, we're going to create a new branch called summer, like so. Fantastic. And I have switched that branch because it says commit to summer, and I shouldn't have called it summer. I should have sort of called it summer poem 01, but just ignore that. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to say save as summer. And I'm going to put that in the season poems, which is my thing here. And I'm going to click save. And here we can see the changes in here. So again, we're going to commit to this. Created the summer poem. New poem for summer, and then I'm going to commit that one as well, and I'm also going to publish this branch as well. Great. So now if we go back into GitHub, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so in GitHub, let's go back to code, and yeah, if I go to main. Okay, there we go. So you can see in GitHub, we now have one summer poem 01 and summer, which should have been summer poem 01, just ignore that. But now we've got these two things in here. Now the main branch only has autumn. The spring branch has autumn and spring, and the summer branch has autumn and summer. But our final version needs to have autumn, summer, and spring. All right, so I need to say, hey, I've got this new thing. I need you to bring it in. Like we said, we need to merge. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a pull request. And I'm going to go to Spring first. I'm going to say compare and pull request. And I can come down here and I can say, okay, well, this looks good. The request is to merge Spring Poem 1 into main. So I'm going to say create pull request. And now it will check for conflicts. Right. So what might happen, for example, is that I change a file, and the file, the main branch, has one line for 4. I have another line for line number 4. The two conflict each other, so you have to pick which one you're going to go with. But we've got no conflicts with base branch. That's fine. So I'm going to click merge pull request, and you can put like a whole description in here, and be good, document your work. So let's confirm that merge, and now the merge is confirmed. And now I've merged that in. I don't need this branch anymore, so I can just click delete branch. Awesome. So if I come back to my code, we can see that the main branch is here, and it has the spring poem within it. Here it is. Brilliant. And lastly, I have the summer one. Now I can say compare and have a little look. So I can say, okay, let's have a look at what's going on here. And I might not be happy. I might send this back and say, you know what, this isn't good enough. You need to sort of fix this thing or fix that thing. I can also just say, just ditch it and say, right, I don't want to do this one. And you can add all these attributes as well, like what project is it for and blah, blah, blah. This is all GitHub stuff, by the way. This is GitHub specifically. This is not Git. This is GitHub. But I'm also going to say create pull request like so. It's going to check for conflicts. And then I'm going to merge and confirm merge. Lastly, I'm going to come here and delete the branch because I don't need it. Awesome. So now when we come back to the main code, we will see autumn, spring, summer. Now, somebody probably wants to do a poem for winter. And if you're out there and you want to do it, then you can do exactly this, right? You can come in, you can create a branch, you can add winter poem into it, and then you create a pull request. And I say, oh, somebody else has done this. Cool, I'll add it in. So that's how you do collaboration. In a nutshell, that's how it is. And that is Git for vibe coders, right? So to sort of summarize the whole thing, you're going to go to your LLM, right? Whatever it is. And you're going to ask it its questions. Okay, you're going to say, oh, hey, develop me, build me a tool where I can do this, blah, 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 blah. And that's going to generate a bunch of files for you, which is your application. And you're going to now go ahead and test that. All right. That's meant to be a test tube. It looks like a cigarette, but ignore that. So you're going to go and test that. If it all passed the test and you think, yeah, no, this is good. This is a good starting point. You are then going to commit. Like so. And then you're going to repeat the process. So you're going to prompt the LLM, get some updates to your files. And if you're like, okay, I tested it and it's all good, you're going to commit. And then you're going to do the same again. You're going to prompt the LLM. You're going to get a bunch of changes to your files or some additions to your files. And then you might be in a situation where you're like, nope, that's bad. And what you're going to do is revert to last, basically, go back to my save point, right? Discard changes. In fact, I shouldn't use revert. Discard changes, right? That's what you're going to want to do. Discard the changes. And what that does, it basically erases all of this and gets rid of it and says, no, none of that. We are now back here in this location. So we can now say, okay, cool. Well, we're going to start again. And we're going to prompt the LLM. And we're going to get the whole thing back again. Fantastic. And then we're going to, all passes, and therefore we're going to commit. So and so forth. So prompt the LLM, get your files, test the thing. If it's what you expected, then commit it. Do it again and again. If it isn't the thing you expected, then you discard the changes. And then you go back to this stage and you can try again, right? Rather than, what you might find is you kind of come to this point where you test it and it's wrong. So you try and prompt your way out of it. But then it gives you something else wrong. So you try and prompt your way out of it. But what that does is that it sort of puts you back here, and then you're just in this loop over and over again, and your money is getting burnt because this all costs tokens, right? So you don't want to get in this loop. It's easier just to say, do you know what, ditch that, start from here again, try and do it again, right? Because LLMs are essentially, they are statistical models. So you're rolling the dice whenever you prompt it. And sometimes you roll the dice and it's the wrong thing. So you need to say, right, cut that, roll the dice again. Let's try again. That's going to be fantastic. And that's what you're going to do. Now, for this case, if you've got more than one person working on a project, so you might have 3 people and they're all prompting themselves, it's going to be the same thing where you're just going to say, right, this is my LLM. I'm going to prompt it. I'm going to get a whole bunch of files. I'm going to commit. And then I'm going to push to the server. That way, person number 2, so this will be person number 1, person number 2, can then say, I'm going to download these files, and then I'm going to use my LLM, and I'm going to prompt, and then when I get a result that's good, I'm going to commit. But I'm not going to mess with the main, the actual application that people need to download. I'm going to do it into a new branch. Like so. New branch. And then that way I can work in isolation, and should it be completely wrong, then I can just ditch the whole branch and start again and copy from the latest version. But equally, you know, if it is good, then all I have to do is then merge it back into main. There we go, 45 minutes. A quick overview of Git. Any questions? If anyone wants to see a little bit more of this stuff in detail, more than happy to do so. It's good to see I've had a few viewers as well. Thank you very much for coming. It's really great to see. And I hope so. I hope you took something away from this, to be honest. This will obviously be available on my YouTube forevermore. And you'll be able to go back and watch it again and see how you do it. But this is essentially, yeah, how you use Git and how you manage your versions. And this is called version control, right? So when I say have yourself a save point to kind of go back to, that's version control. And that's how it works. Okay, no other questions. Well, thank you very much for coming. You can find me everywhere at Chuffed Dom, much like here on YouTube. And that is on GitHub, over on TikTok, on the TikToks, where I talk a lot of stuff about the philosophies of product and how to build applications and how to monetize them and all that kind of stuff. Obviously here on the YouTubes, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. The linky dink on Dom-Maurice. Like so. Okay, I'll call it there. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions, please let me know. And if you ever want to see like the whole vibe coding flow, then with an actual application and using Git and using multiple people, then do please let me know. That does take a little bit more coordination, but I would love to kind of take people through that process to see how it works and how all these things come together. But apart from that, have a good evening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and yeah, have a good one. Oh, and I love a subscribe and a like. That would absolutely love that big time. See you later.